At a baby shower, my husband laughed and said, "With her? I'd rather stay childless than raise kids with that kind of negativity." To his whole family. Everyone burst into laughter. I clenched my fists and walked toward the door, but as I stood there shaking with humiliation, something clicked in my mind that Randall and his cruel family had no idea about. While they saw me as just another wife to mock and control, I was actually Gemma Richardson, senior financial analyst at Hartwell & Associates, making $847,000 annually managing investment portfolios for high-net-worth clients. More importantly, I'd been quietly documenting every financial transaction in our marriage for 3 years, and I had leverage they couldn't even imagine. Let me back up and explain how we got here, because the baby shower incident was just the breaking point of years of systematic emotional abuse that I'd been strategically preparing to end. I met Randall 3 years ago when we got stuck in an elevator at an escape room for 40 minutes. It wasn't romantic, just awkward small talk and me desperately needing to use the bathroom. But somehow that led to coffee, then dating, then marriage. What Randall never understood was that my quiet, analytical personality wasn't weakness. It was professional training from managing $50 million in client assets where emotional reactions can cost people their retirement funds. Randall came from what he called a big family, though I'd describe it more as a toxic echo chamber of about 15 people who gathered monthly to tear down whoever wasn't present. His sister Reagan was the ringleader, a 28-year-old real estate agent who made maybe $40,000 in a good year, but acted like she ran a Fortune 500 company. His mother, Dorothy, controlled the family dynamics through a combination of guilt trips and financial manipulation, despite the fact that she and Randall's father lived mostly off Social Security and the occasional handout from family members. From the beginning, they treated me like an outsider who didn't understand their traditions. These traditions apparently included mocking my career as boring number stuff, making jokes about my clothes being too serious, and constantly suggesting I needed to loosen up and be more fun. What they didn't know was that my analytical mind was cataloging every slight, every financial inconsistency, and every piece of leverage I might need later. The baby shower was at Dorothy's house for Randall's cousin Ariana, who was actually the only decent person in that family. The usual suspects were there. Reagan holding court with a white claw, 2 aunts who competed over who could be loudest, and various family members whose names I'd never bothered learning because they treated me like temporary furniture. I was quietly standing near the window, scrolling through market reports on my phone, when one of the aunts launched into the inevitable interrogation. "So when are you two going to give us some babies?" The room went dead silent, like they'd been waiting all afternoon for this moment. I gave my standard deflection. "Oh, we're not in a rush." Randall and I had discussed this privately. We both agreed we weren't ready for kids, though he always added weird comments about being too young for that responsibility. He's 33, hardly a child, but I'd learned not to push. But instead of backing me up like a partner should, Randall saw his moment to be the family comedian. He let out this harsh, barking laugh and delivered the line that would end our marriage. "With her? I'd rather stay childless than raise kids with that kind of negativity." The room exploded with genuine laughter. Reagan immediately piled on. "She'd probably give birth to complaints and breastfeed them drama." More laughter. I stood there, completely exposed, while my husband grinned at the room, basking in their approval like he'd just delivered a punchline at a comedy club instead of publicly humiliating his wife. I said quietly, "You're not funny." Randall's response was even worse. "Relax. You're always so sensitive. No wonder I don't want kids with you." That's when my financial analyst brain kicked into overdrive. These people thought I was weak, that I'd just take their abuse and stay quiet like I always had. They had no idea that I'd been strategically positioning myself for exactly this kind of betrayal. While they were making jokes at my expense, I was already calculating how much this moment of cruelty was going to cost them. I clenched my fists and walked toward the door, ignoring Randall's attempt to grab my arm and his demand that I not ruin this for everyone. As I passed through their gauntlet of smirks and whispers, I heard Dorothy stage whisper to Randall, "Control your wife." That phrase sealed their fate. I wasn't just angry. I was strategically motivated. I drove straight to my friend Melanie's apartment and spent the evening eating leftover pizza while my phone buzzed with notifications from the family group chat they called Fam Jam. I turned it off and focused on what really mattered, accessing my work laptop and reviewing exactly what kind of financial ammunition I had available. Here's what Randall's family never understood about me. I wasn't just successful at my job, I was exceptional. At 29, I was the youngest senior financial analyst in my firm's history, managing portfolios worth over $50 million and earning more than Randall's entire extended family combined. I had a master's degree in financial analysis from Wharton, professional certifications in investment management, and a network of attorneys, accountants, and financial advisors who owed me favors from profitable referrals over the years. More importantly, I'd been methodically documenting every financial aspect of our marriage since month 6. When I first noticed Randall's tendency to make unilateral decisions about our money, I had spreadsheets tracking every joint expense, copies of all our financial statements, records of every time Randall had borrowed money from his family, and detailed logs of how much we'd spent on gifts, dinners, and contributions to family events. The numbers were staggering. In 3 years of marriage, we'd spent $23,847 on Randall's family. Birthday presents, holiday gifts, restaurant bills when we offered to pay, gas money for family road trips, and contributions to various family emergencies that were really just poor financial planning. Meanwhile, we'd spent exactly $1,200 on my much smaller, financially stable family. But the real leverage came from our joint assets and the financial commitments Randall had made, assuming I'd always be there to subsidize his generous family provider image. Our house was in both names, but I'd provided the entire $47,000 down payment from my pre-marriage savings account. I had documentation proving this, plus records showing I'd paid 73% of our mortgage payments, utilities, and property taxes. Randall contributed maybe $800 monthly to household expenses, while I covered everything else, including his $640 monthly car payment and his $290 monthly student loan payments. Even more damaging, I had records of the financial promises Randall had made to family members that he expected me to help fulfill. He'd promised to help his parents with a $15,000 roof repair next spring. He'd committed to paying for Reagan's real estate license renewal courses, about $3,200. Most significantly, he'd told Dorothy we'd contribute $8,000 toward a family reunion cruise he was organizing for next summer. These people thought they'd been insulting some powerless wife who'd just take their abuse and keep subsidizing their lifestyle. They were about to learn they'd been attacking someone who controlled access to $847,000 in annual income and had been documenting every financial detail of their relationship with military precision. The next morning brought the predictable digital circus. 37 notifications in the family group chat, ranging from Randall's weak attempts to find me to Reagan, posting memes calling me a drama queen. Most telling was Dorothy's passive-aggressive performance. I hope Gemma feels better soon. We're all very concerned about her overreaction to some harmless family fun. But I wasn't hiding or crying. I was at my desk by implementing a financial strategy that would demonstrate exactly how much their harmless family fun was about to cost them. My first call was to Janet Blackwell, my attorney friend who specialized in divorce cases for high-net-worth individuals. Janet and I had worked together on several client referrals, and she owed me approximately $47,000 in commission fees from investments I'd helped her clients optimize. "Janet, I need a consultation about asset protection in a marriage dissolution case." The opposing party's family has been engaging in systematic emotional abuse, and I have comprehensive financial documentation going back 3 years. Janet's response was immediate. With your income level and documentation habits, you're in an extremely strong position. Let's schedule an emergency session for this afternoon. Bring all your records. My second call was to David Hoffman, a forensic accountant who'd worked with me on 3 different client cases involving complex asset division. David, I need a complete financial analysis of a 3-year marriage with detailed asset separation recommendations. The respondent has been making financial commitments assuming access to my income without my knowledge or consent. David knew my analytical capabilities and attention to detail. Gemma, with your documentation standards, this should be straightforward. I can have a preliminary analysis ready by tomorrow morning. My third strategic consultation was with Rebecca Taylor, a private investigator who specialized in asset research and had handled background checks for several of my high-value clients. Rebecca, I need a comprehensive financial profile on approximately 15 individuals, focusing on debts, liens, employment status, and any financial vulnerabilities that might be relevant to ongoing harassment and emotional abuse case. Rebecca's firm had earned over $23,000 in referral fees from my client recommendations over the past 2 years. She understood this was professional courtesy repayment. I'll have preliminary profiles ready by end of business tomorrow, complete analysis by Friday. While Randall's family was still posting memes in their group chat and expecting me to apologize for overreacting to public humiliation, I was building a comprehensive legal and financial strategy that would permanently restructure their comfortable assumptions about access to my resources. By Thursday morning, I had a complete picture that would have shocked Randall if he'd been capable of understanding financial complexity beyond his basic $52,000 annual IT support salary. Janet's legal analysis confirmed what I'd suspected. Ohio's divorce laws would favor me significantly given my income disparity, documented evidence of emotional abuse, and proof that I'd contributed disproportionately to joint assets. With my documentation showing I'd provided 78% of our joint financial contributions over 3 years, I would likely retain the house, most of our savings, and potentially seek compensation for Randall's financial commitments made without my consent. David's forensic accounting revealed even more advantageous details. Randall had been using our joint credit card for family gifts and expenses totaling $8,947 over the past year without discussing these purchases with me. Each transaction was documented in my spreadsheets, proving a pattern of financial deception alongside the emotional abuse. Most devastatingly, Rebecca's investigation exposed the true financial status of Randall's arrogant family members. Dorothy and Randall's father had $23,000 in credit card debt and were 3 months behind on their mortgage. Reagan had been exaggerating her real estate success. Her actual income last year was $31,400, and she owed $18,000 in student loans plus $7,600 in credit card debt. The family members who'd spent years mocking my boring career as insufficiently exciting were living paycheck to paycheck while I was earning more than all of them combined. But the real strategic opportunity came from cross-referencing their social media posts with their financial realities. This family of financial failures had been posting constantly about expensive dinners, vacation plans, designer purchases, and luxury experiences that their credit reports proved they couldn't actually afford. They were maintaining their social status through debt and family handouts, primarily expecting Randall and me to subsidize their lifestyle inflation. Armed with this intelligence, I was ready to demonstrate exactly how expensive their cruelty was going to be. On Friday afternoon, I sent Randall a text with surgical precision. I'll be collecting my belongings from the house tomorrow at 2 p.m. with my father. Please have your things separated from mine. Our joint accounts will be frozen Monday morning pending divorce proceedings. Janet Blackwell from Blackwell and Associates Legal will contact you next week regarding asset division." His response was predictably pathetic. "Gemma, please don't do this. It was just a joke. My family loves you. We can work this out." I replied with devastating simplicity. "Your family laughed at me being publicly humiliated by my own husband. That wasn't love, it was entertainment. The financial analysis of our marriage is complete. This decision is irreversible." Randall immediately called 17 times. I didn't answer. Instead, I was implementing the next phase of my strategy, cutting off the financial pipeline that had been subsidizing his generous family provider image. I contacted our joint credit card company and requested transaction alerts for any purchase over $50, plus spending limits until our accounts could be legally restructured. I notified our mortgage company that pending divorce proceedings might affect our payment structure. Most importantly, I documented every financial commitment Randall had made to family members and calculated exactly how much money they were expecting to lose access to. The roof repair Dorothy had been planning. $15,000 she now couldn't afford. Reagan's real estate course that Randall had promised to fund. $3,200 she'd have to figure out herself. The family reunion cruise that had been built around our expected $8,000 contribution, probably canceled once they realized their holiday fund was gone. But I wasn't finished. These people had made the mistake of thinking I was weak, and I was going to correct that misunderstanding permanently. Saturday afternoon, I arrived at the house with my father and a detailed inventory list I'd prepared months earlier because of course I had. We systematically packed everything I'd purchased or contributed, which turned out to be roughly 60% of our shared belongings. My name was on all the major appliances, most of the furniture, and essentially every item that had made our house look like adults lived there rather than college students. Randall tried one last manipulation attempt, grabbing my arm as I loaded boxes and pleading, "You're destroying everything over one stupid comment. This isn't like you." I looked him directly in the eyes and delivered the line I'd been saving. "You're right, this isn't like me. The old me would have stayed quiet and kept subsidizing your family's lifestyle while they treated me like garbage. But I'm not your financial safety net anymore, Randall. You just lost access to $847,000 in annual income, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what that means for all of you." His face went completely white as the reality hit him. For 3 years, he'd been the generous son and brother who could afford to help everyone because his wife made enough money to cover their actual living expenses. Without my income, he was just another middle-aged IT guy making $52,000 who still needed financial help from his parents instead of providing it. The following Monday brought the reactions I'd been anticipating. Randall's family group chat, which I could still see through a shared family account, exploded with panic as the financial implications became clear. Dorothy posted, "Randall says Gemma is really going through with this divorce. Does anyone know what this means for the cruise fund?" Reagan replied, "Wait, does this affect the money for my licensing courses?" Various family members started calculating how much they'd been counting on Randall's contributions, not realizing those contributions had actually been coming from the woman they'd spent years mocking. The most satisfying message came from Randall himself. "I don't think you guys understand how serious this is. Gemma made most of our money, like most of it. I can't help with the roof anymore or the cruise or any of the stuff I promised. I'm going to be living paycheck to paycheck." Reagan's response was perfect. "What do you mean she made most of your money? You said she just did boring office work." The family was finally learning that their boring office work joke had been subsidizing their entire extended social calendar for 3 years. But the financial reality was just the beginning. Janet's divorce strategy included provisions for emotional distress and systematic emotional abuse, with particular focus on the public humiliation at the baby shower and the documented pattern of family harassment. Ohio law allowed for these considerations in asset division, especially when one party could demonstrate significantly higher earning capacity combined with abuse from the other party's family members. More devastatingly, Rebecca's investigation had uncovered enough financial vulnerability among Randall's family members to make them very interested in avoiding any legal scrutiny of their own circumstances. Dorothy's mortgage situation was precarious enough that any disruption to family financial support could trigger foreclosure proceedings. Reagan's debt-to-income ratio meant she was potentially 3 months away from bankruptcy if her already minimal real estate commissions declined. These people who'd spent years treating me like an outsider were about to learn that I'd been the only thing standing between them and serious financial consequences. The final confrontation came exactly as I'd planned it. Dorothy called me directly, attempting to negotiate on behalf of her precious son. "Gemma, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We've always considered you family. Randall is devastated, and frankly, we're all very concerned about how this divorce will affect everyone." I let her finish, then delivered the response I'd been preparing for 3 years. "Dorothy, you told Randall to control his wife after your family laughed at me being publicly humiliated. That wasn't treating me like family. That was treating me like property. Now you're learning exactly how expensive that mistake is going to be." She tried to backtrack. "It was just family joking around. We didn't mean anything serious by it." "You're right, it wasn't serious to you, but it was serious to me. Serious enough to document everything, consult with attorneys, and realize that I'd been subsidizing the lifestyle of people who saw me as entertainment instead of family. That ends now." Dorothy's voice got smaller. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing. I want nothing from any of you, which is exactly what you're going to get from me going forward. No more joint Christmas gifts, no more covering restaurant bills, no more contributions to family emergencies or vacations or repairs. You wanted to treat me like I didn't belong in your family, so now I don't." The silence on her end told me she was finally calculating the numbers. 3 years of my contributions weren't just going to disappear. They were going to leave a hole in their family budget that Randall's $52,000 IT salary couldn't possibly fill. Within 2 months, the consequences were cascading through their entire extended family network. Dorothy and her husband listed their house for sale, unable to afford the mortgage without expecting future help from Randall. Reagan's real estate license expired because she couldn't afford the renewal courses, effectively ending her already struggling career. The family reunion cruise was canceled when participants realized the subsidies they'd been counting on were gone. Most satisfying of all, Randall moved back in with his parents at age 33, which created additional financial strain on Dorothy's household and completely destroyed his carefully maintained image as the successful family provider. But my victory wasn't just financial. It was professional and social. Janet's divorce proceedings resulted in me retaining 87% of our joint assets, including full ownership of our house, which I sold for $340,000 profit. David's forensic accounting documentation served as evidence for emotional distress compensation, adding $15,000 to my settlement. Rebecca's investigation provided enough leverage to ensure Randall's family would never attempt to contact or harass me again. 6 months after the baby shower incident, I was living in a beautiful downtown condo, had received a promotion to senior portfolio manager with a salary increase to $923,000 annually, and had earned recognition from my firm for innovative client retention strategies I developed during my divorce proceedings. Meanwhile, Randall was sharing a bedroom with his father, working the same entry-level IT job he'd held for 6 years, and dealing with the reality that his family's lifestyle had been built on access to income he'd never actually earned. Dorothy's house sold for barely enough to cover their remaining mortgage. Reagan moved back in with her parents and was working retail while trying to restart her real estate career. The extended family members who'd participated in mocking me now understood that their comfortable assumptions about future financial support had been permanently destroyed. The most poetic justice came when Dorothy called me one final time, 8 months after the divorce was finalized. "Gemma, I know we made mistakes, but Reagan is really struggling and Christmas is coming, and we were wondering if maybe you'd consider helping with just the kids' gifts this year." My response was everything I'd hoped it would be. "Dorothy, I'm sure Reagan's children will have a wonderful Christmas, but you'll need to figure out how to pay for it yourselves. After all, I'm just someone with boring number stuff who apparently doesn't understand family traditions. I wouldn't want to interfere with your family dynamics." Today, I'm engaged to Marcus Webb, a fellow financial analyst who actually respects my intelligence and earns enough money to contribute equally to our relationship. We're planning a small, elegant wedding that will cost more than Randall's entire annual salary, funded entirely by our combined 6-figure incomes. Randall and his family weren't invited, obviously. Sometimes I drive past Dorothy's old house, which now belongs to a young family who actually appreciates the renovations I'd funded. The new owners have no idea that the beautiful kitchen and hardwood floors were paid for by a woman whose former in-laws thought was too boring and negative to deserve basic respect. Randall learned that publicly humiliating your spouse has real financial consequences. His family learned that mocking someone's career while depending on their income is a strategy with limited sustainability. And I learned that sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply removing your competence and resources from people who never valued them properly. They wanted me to stay quiet and keep subsidizing their lifestyle while they treated me like entertainment. Instead, they got exactly what they claimed to want, a life without my negativity, my contributions, and my financial support. Be careful what you wish for.